Another project for the day. This being on Sunday, December 26th, 2021, the day after Christmas. I've got nothing to do except a dumb little home project. So during the whole COVID period, I bought virtually all the food that I bought using my credit card. I don't think I used cash once to buy anything. But when I did use cash for various things, usually for things besides food, I got change in coins, and I hate carrying coins around with me, always have. I almost never have any in my pocket, and I just threw them on top of my washing machine until it became so many that they would fall off on the floor every time I ran the washing machine. So I put them all in a bag. It's not a huge number. It's actually less than I thought it would be, the way it looked on top of the washer. But I've decided to come up with some sort of very simple, quick and dirty, not a sorter. I can hand sort these things just about as easily as any of the mechanisms, and I've been looking at YouTube videos and online for ideas. There's a lot of ideas. And I figure by the time I muck around with that, I can just hand sort the things when I get them in. I'll get 2 or 3 coins at a time. I'll just drop them in bins. So what I'm really talking about here is coming up with some single unit made out of wood with little hand scoopable bins for coins, and just throw them in there when I get them and scoop them out if I need them. And just make sure it has enough room and that the compartments are big enough to get my fingers in there to scoop coins out when I want to empty them. That's the goal. Alright, after a quick sort, I just wanted to get some idea of the volume of coins I was likely to accumulate. And of course, if it gets to be too many, I can just take some to the bank and get rid of them. And I may actually do that with a lot of these. But just in case, I wanted to have it be able to hold the current amount I have, and that'll help me size it out. Alright, I figure I'll scoop with the 3 middle fingers at worst case, maybe only a couple fingers, but I'll make it wide enough, that is each bin. So maybe if I make them 2.5 inches wide, that should be plenty of room to get 3 fingers in there and have a little bit of slop. Any wider than that and I'll start missing coins I'm trying to scoop out. So I'm going to make them 2.5 inches wide. That's a start. Okay, with quarters being the worst case in this situation, being the bulkiest, and I have more of them, I've just penciled out 3 compartments 1.5 inches wide, or 2.5 inches wide rather, with 1/4 inch dividers, assuming I use 1/4 inch plywood or some other wood cut down to a 1/4 inch. I figure I need 5 inches deep because I'm going to make slopes on the front and rear for making it easier to scoop coins out, and that'll take up some space, so I figured 5 inches at the top, and then it'll be a little narrower at the bottom. And I've arranged my quarters here, and it ends up being a little bit less than 1.5 inches tall on the stack. So if I make the bins 1.5 inches deep at the deepest spot, it should still have plenty of room to hold that many quarters. And then of course the other coins will have a lot more room in them. I could probably almost make 2 compartments and still have everything fit, but I don't think I'm going to do it that way. Still think about it a little bit though. Well, with more pondering, even if I make compartments with a slope front and back, and that height, and slope front and back, I can actually fit all the nickels and dimes into something with 1.5 inches, so it'll be up to where my thumb is, and that can easily hold that many. So I can make the whole thing a little smaller. I don't need this compartment, it'll just be like this. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Alright, I've sketched out the 2 blocks. There's going to be 1 block for the 2 dishes and another block for the single dish. Each of them is going to be 2.5 inches wide, and these dimensions, these are drawn to scale. I figured out the radii for the scoop curves in the dishes. There's going to be probably plywood sides and a divider between these two pieces, but the rest of it will be just these big blocks of pine wood. And these are the scraps I've got left. I'm down to the dregs. So I figured, okay, well, I can cut these slats, and if you've seen my video on making the medicine bottle rack, my most recent video posted to YouTube, I used up most of these pieces here, and these in turn were left over from making the last instrument case I made, making the frame. So I've got these scraps, and I've got X number of pieces that I can cut out of them. And I've got this piece, which I think is also pine. It's another select pine thing, but from an older job. And yet another piece, and I probably won't use this piece, it's just too small. But between all these pieces, I can cut enough out for this piece here, I can stack 2 pieces of this guy, and then 4 or 3 pieces from these, and then I've got this big piece here. If I cut out a piece and cut it down the middle, I can have a piece that'll go up here in the corner, and glue all those together, and then I can cut out the needed dimension from that. And then for this other guy here, it's going to use up the rest of these pieces, 7 of them across, and then what did I figure out? Oh yeah, another piece of this here, and the other half of this piece here. These are, I think, the same thickness, yeah, so that's how I was dividing those up. So I'm using almost all of these 4 pieces to make these 2 blocks of wood. And then I was kind of in a quandary, because my thought was just to glue them together into a big block and then carve out the areas that I have to carve out. But I thought I was going to use my scroll saw, but it won't deal with pieces that are 2.5 inches deep or 2.5 inches thick. That's too much for it. The bandsaw will do it, but it won't do quite these curves, but I can carve them out and then make a bunch of little cuts and then round them out by sanding, I think. That'll be a little bit interesting, but I think it'll work. So the first order of business is to pre-cut these guys down to the necessary sections to glue together. Yeah, so for sanity, I've got all the ones in the nickel and dime block marked up in sections, similar for the quarters, and I've got all the different parts marked so I don't lose track of which one's getting used for what. for the glue up. Let's see here. So I'm going to start out with all these Q parts here through 7. So all of those, and just generally blow the sawdust off of them. Have to do this part really quickly because the glue will start setting up between all these layers. The trick here is keeping these flat. They all want to slide up. So I think what I got to do here Okay, so I've got some scrap wood as slats, which I'm using to compress it this way. That'll keep them all alignment in that direction. And I made enough run out on the ends that they don't have to be precisely lined up this way. I'll trim that off later. And I can't really get in there to get rid of the excess glue, so I'm just going to let it dry up that way and trim it off later. For the other section that's made out of these bigger boards, I've got this piece that'll fit in here, and I've decided to just glue and clamp that whole assembly up at once instead of doing it in stages. Alright, I've got this all clamped up in here. Using every last small clamp I have and a couple big clamps, which are unwieldy but are doing the job. I think I need to buy more of these. Seems like I'm always running short of them. So what are they? They've probably got about a 6 to 7 inch beam on them, and they can go in, well, at least an inch from the beam to the clamp surfaces, so 7 by 1 anyway. See what I can find on Amazon. I don't think my hardware store has that much of these little ones anymore. You may have noticed that I have a piece of masonite down here underneath the wax paper. That's because the last time I clamped something up on here, there was enough, and had it actually clamped where glue was seeping out the bottom, enough moisture got through the wax paper that it left a little rust on the top of the table saw that I'm using as a workbench. So this time I've got the wax paper, but I also have a bit of scrap masonite just to hopefully prevent that moisture migration. Alright, here's the first block. I think in order to put on these remaining couple of pieces, it's going to extend a little bit over there, but I need to plane this down a little bit. Make sure I got this right. Q8 and Q9. Yeah, those are the only two remaining parts. So actually I should probably join them like this first and then glue them onto here. So I'm going to hold off planing this for a little bit, and I'm going to glue up these two now that I've got some clamps freed up. Alright, those are glued together now. Back to my nap. All of these are out of the clamps now. Just waiting for them to dry a little bit more before I start planing them. But I still have to do that today so I can join these two together to make its final block and let it cure overnight. And I've got this scrap of 1/4 inch craft plywood, which I've marked out with slightly oversized panels that'll be the dividers. Well, it'll be the two end plates as well as the divider between the two halves. So I might as well cut those out while I'm down here in the basement. Alright, I have to plane this block and this block so that they'll fit together flush for gluing. Right now they're a little too uneven. So I have to run this through, clean up the glue on here on one side, and then plane it flat on the other side, and run this through just enough to get it flat on one side. That's all that's important for now. The disadvantage of cutting really small boards like this is that it tends to lift after it goes through the pressure area, and it makes very slight indents in the wood, and that's fine. The way I'm going to glue this up here, that's going to be filled with glue, and it'll be kind of transparent, and the part with the bigger cut is going to be on the outside that I'm going to cut off with the saw later on. Okay, that guy's all glued up, so sometime tomorrow when I have some time, I'm going to take this one and this other haphazard looking block and use the table saw or the band saw, one or the other, probably the table saw, to cut it down to the final sizes. Then I have to figure out the best way to carve out these bathtub shapes into there with the equipment I have. They're going to be kind of small to use a scroll saw on. Or a jigsaw rather, kind of small to use a jigsaw on, because there isn't enough area around them to stabilize it. And the scroll saw is not able to handle pieces this thick. So again, I'm going to have to figure out what the best method is. Probably I'll use the band saw. That's the only thing that'll have the reach. It just isn't that good at cutting the curves. So as I probably mentioned before, on the curves I'll just have to cut short of those and then try to sand those areas down to get the final shape. Alright, I'm going to do a little cleanup on these now. Shave them off so that they're flat on all sides. Little burn on that side, but that's okay. It'll be covered up. So there's that one. That's as high as the blade goes. Just do a hair in here. Okay, both of these pieces are now cut down to their respective cross sections, and I just need to cut them to length now. That'll be the easy part. They need to be 5.5 inches long after trimming off just a little bit of roughness on the ends. So okay, so here's one block. It's a little better side, but the ends will be covered. Well, no, actually they won't. Those will be sticking out the front, but That fits fine, and it's the right length. So that's one. This one also fits fine and is the right length. Now I have to cut out these patterns, stick them on here, and get to using the bandsaw. Alright, I've transferred the paper patterns to the wood and now to the bandsaw. Okay, so I've got these roughed out now. I'm not going to try to sand these curved areas on the belt sander, but I will get the flat areas and then I'll concentrate on the curved areas. Alright, in order to sand the corners, I've decided to use a piece of dowel. I don't know what it is. It's a bit bigger than 1/2 inch, and my drill will accept a 1/2 inch into the chuck. So I have to take down the last inch or so of this dowel to the size that'll fit into the drill. And I'm just planning on using my metal lathe with its normal tooling intended for metal work, and hopefully it'll cut the wood adequately. If not, I'll improvise a tool rest and use one of my wood lathe cutting tools. Not quite yet. I think one more pass. I think that should go into the drill now. Alright, it chucks up. It even runs true. Good. Alright, I put on a little bit of 150 grit paper I had laying around, sandpaper that is. Super glued one end of it, then wrapped it around and super glued it again, sprayed it with accelerant. I'm not sure if that'll work well. It may come right off. We'll see. Well, there's still a couple of slight scratches in there, but I can't actually feel them. They feel smooth to me, so they're cosmetic blemishes more than just not being sanded enough. So I think that's going to work. Okay, let's see how this goes. Have this guy, this is the front. This is a divider. This is something that needs a little supplemental sanding before going in for prime time. I think that's okay. This is the front. And then these two plates go on the outside. They are oversized, so I can cut them down later. Alright, it's all glued up. Clamped in 4 places. I've wiped off the excess glue on the inside. The outer edges here where there's excess glue, those can be trimmed off with the table saw blade, front and rear. And then I just need to slap a little varnish on it, put some sort of an anti-skid pad on the bottom so it doesn't slide around when the washing machine is in vibrate or, you know, spin mode and is vibrating a bit. Don't want this all ending up on the floor. So it's coming along pretty well. I may still decide to do some rollover trim or something at the very corners, but these panels of course are also taller and they're going to be trimmed off. Okay, the assembly is released from its clamps after a few hours. I'm going to let it cure further overnight, and then I can cut the excess wood off and do a little more sanding and then hit it with the varnish. It's coming together. Okay, there it is. Trimmed and sanded one last time. I got my nice tapered grab out of here with the fingers shaped to it in all 3 compartments. Everything's nice and flat on the top. All the sides look pretty. Obviously the laminations of all those pieces show on the front and rear, not on the sides, but they're nice and neat. So time to put a little varnish on. Alright, I've got some of my Minwax clear satin varnish, polyurethane varnish that is, in my ball jar. And as usual, I'm going to use my drill operated stirrer to get it mixed up. And as usual, once I'm done with it, I fill the empty airspace with the Blockoxygen before sealing it up so that I have less accelerated or reduced anyway drying out of the product. There's no oxygen in there to react with. And there's one coat of varnish on it. And as usual, I've got a couple heater fans blowing on it so that it cures in the cool basement. And the next morning I gave it another coat of varnish. Okay, second coat of varnish is dry, and I've decided I'm going to use up a little bit of a spare yoga mat to put on the bottom of this. So let's see, this way. Have to trim it to size. A little bit of rubber cement I think will be appropriate for this. I'm going to use the recommended approach for stronger bonds of putting the adhesive on, or the cement on, both surfaces and then putting them together. Alright, applied to both surfaces and then pressed on. I have it just a little bit inboard of the side so it doesn't show so much. And there it is, completed. Real easy to grab a couple out of there, scoop them out. You can't really use the scoop function this when it's so full, but if it was emptier, it'd be real easy to slide coins up from the bottom. That actually came out better than I thought it would.